This video is all about the oboe reed, how to get it ready, how to play it, how to do everything with that. So let's start with our basic introduction of what is a reed. This is an oboe reed. The thread can be all different colors, so it won't necessarily look like this, but this is basically our mouthpiece for the oboe. Similar to the bassoon, the oboe uses what's called a double reed, as opposed to clarinet and saxophone that use a single reed. What makes ours a double reed, if you can see it, you can see into the reed that it has two separate blades, a top and a bottom. That's what makes it a double reed. For the clarinet and saxophone, it's one flat piece of reed, so it doesn't make a sound on its own. The oboe reed actually can make a sound on its own without being put in the instrument. So this is just an example of one. Now we're going to talk about how do we get it ready to play. You're not going to take it right now and just put it in your mouth and go. The reed is dry. The reed is actually made out of a type of bamboo, so it is from plant material. And the way it makes a sound is that it vibrates when we blow and when our tongue touches the reed. But when something's dry, it doesn't vibrate quite as much. So we want to always soak our reed. And that doesn't mean you're just going to stick it in your mouth and soak it. It means you're going to sit it in water for approximately 2 to 3 minutes. Now, if you're wondering, what do I soak it in? I have some examples to show you. Now, my reed has already been soaking for a bit. So something like there are actually official reed soakers. This is an example of one that has different lines that help you know how much water to put in it and comes with a lid to make it sealable so that it doesn't leak in your backpack. Or when I'm just at home, I use one that's uncovered. This one is actually a little kitchen one that's cute and is like a little egg with a face here. But you can see that I've put my reed in the water gently. I've filled it up to where maybe low here on the thread, that a little bit of that gets wet, but you notice this cork part is sticking up, the water is not that high, and we don't want the cork to get wet. Because ultimately the cork part is what's going to go in your instrument. And if that gets wet, it's really hard to put it in and take it out because then it's slippery and wet. And we don't want it to expand or do weird things because we want to stay the right size for our oboe. So like I said, this is normal, like room temperature water. I know when you're at school, it might be cold water, that's okay. But kind of normal room temperature water for about 2 to 3 minutes is what we're gonna do to soak the reed. And that allows it to get all damp and it to be able to vibrate more when we put air through the reed. So this reed has already soaked for about 2 to 3 minutes, so it's ready to go. So what I'll do, take the reed out of water. In this case, I'll set my little reed soaker down. And what I do, I hold kind of in the middle of the reed. I'm gonna take the cork end actually, and I'm gonna blow through it because if you can tell, there's a lot of water still trapped inside of it, and that's gonna make it sound kind of spitty. So we're gonna blow that out. Okay, so now our reed's ready to go. The next thing we're gonna talk about is how to form your embouchure. And that is a really fancy word for how our face is gonna be when we play. Because obviously the reed's gonna go in our mouth and we're not just gonna do it some random way. We want it to be in a nice way that's really hugging the reed correctly so that we get a good sound. So instead of starting just on the reed, we're gonna just continue to hold it. You can see I'm holding the cork part and we're gonna pretend with our finger to form an embouchure before we actually put the reed in our mouth. So you're gonna take your first finger and rest it on gently on your bottom lip. So I'm not pressing down really hard, but it's just kind of floating there. And then we're gonna say ooh to get what we call our corners, these corners of your mouth nice and forward. And then you're gonna pull down with your upper lip to seal it. So we'll try that again. Finger, ooh, pull down. And that is how you form your oboe embouchure. So we're gonna try that with the reed. We're not gonna make a sound yet, but we're just gonna form the embouchure. So reed. And if you notice where I'm putting it, see right there? It's what we call the heart of the reed, but kind of, you're not gonna wanna put the reed in your mouth way down here. If you're looking at your reed, it's really thick. And you're not gonna want it too far on the tip. So somewhere kind of about here, rest on your bottom lip, ooh, and pull down. See, that is the ideal embouchure for the oboe. And that's what we want every time we play. You also want to make sure at least a little bit of pink from your bottom lip is visible. So if you can practice with your phone in selfie mode or in front of a mirror some when you're practicing getting this figured out, that's a really good step to do. One other thing I didn't mention with the reed or explain is the care and keeping of it. So I mentioned that it is made out of bamboo. It's a piece of plant. And if you're looking at it, you can tell it's super thin. Reeds are very, very fragile, so you want to be super careful with them. So you can see me sometimes touching it. We want no squeezing, no touching, no messing with it because we don't want it to chip and break, right? So the other thing to be careful about is when you're putting the reed in your mouth, making sure that it's not hitting your teeth. If you have braces, that it's not hitting the braces, that you're really conscious about where the reed is in your mouth in relation to everything. Even something as simple as if you're resting your oboe back and your reed's hitting your hair can be something that can add cracks or chip the reed. So we want to be really careful with that. The biggest thing is to take really good care of our reeds so they last longer because they're not cheap. Now, one thing, now that we formed we soaked our reed, we formed our embouchure, we did all that loveliness, how do we store our reed? So a lot of times your reeds come in what are called reed coffins, which are these little singular cases for reeds that trap them in and they trap moisture. We don't want to keep reeds in those long term because it, like I said, traps the moisture, so your reed can grow mold, and that is gross, and we don't want that. So a reed case, similar, mine is a big reed case, so you don't need something this big, but similar to this that holds the reeds. Ideally, somewhere between 3 to 6 reeds is probably what you're gonna wanna hold, but something that either has what we call ribbons here to hold it. Mine has ribbons plus these pegs, but you definitely wanna have ribbons. You don't want just the pegs. There are a lot that have plastic pegs and they don't hold the reeds securely either. Again, these little lovely little babies here can cost anywhere from like $12 up to $40 per reed, and they don't last very long. So you want to take really good care of them. So when you're looking at reed cases, you may see, oh, that seems a little expensive, but in the grand scheme of things, if you're protecting your reed, you're going to be in really good shape.